I almost didn't go to Malaysia. I had a layover in Kuala Lumpur, 4 hours, Terminal 2, and I remember sitting at the gate thinking, this is a stopover country. This is where you wait. I booked Bali instead. I thought I knew what Malaysia was without ever having been there. That was 3 years ago. I have been back to Malaysia 4 times since. And I am still angry at myself for how long it took me to understand what I was actually looking at. I know what you're thinking right now. Malaysia. It's not as exotic as Bali. Not as famous as Bangkok. Not as clean and efficient as Singapore. That's exactly what I thought. And everything I am about to show you is the direct evidence of how wrong that assumption was. I have spent time in Tokyo, Singapore, Bangkok, Bali, Ho Chi Minh City. So when I tell you that Malaysia has 10 places that stopped me cold, places that don't appear on any major tourist map, places that even Malaysians themselves have never visited, I need you to understand I am not being sentimental. I am telling you the truth that nobody is packaging for you yet. Let's start with a forest that makes rain indoors. 90 minutes east of Kuala Lumpur, in the highlands of Pahang, there is a place called Hutan Lipur Lenteng. You park, you walk maybe 20 minutes into primary jungle, and then something strange happens. Water starts falling on you. Not rain. Not a waterfall. The canopy is so dense, so layered, that moisture from the valley floor condenses against the understory and falls back down through 60 meters fig trees. It is raining inside the forest. The sky above you is perfectly clear. I met a man named Farouk in KL, an architect, born and raised there, who didn't know this place existed until a German colleague mentioned it to him. Farouk drove out there one Saturday. He told me he sat under those trees for 2 hours and didn't take a single photograph. He goes back almost every month now. He said, "I live here. How did I not know this was here?" Bali's sacred monkey forest gets sold to you as a slice of untouched nature. It has a ticketing booth, 2 gift shops, and on any given Sunday, more Instagram content creators than monkeys. Lenteng has none of that. It has trees that have been filtering this air for longer than anyone in that ticketing queue has been alive. That is what untouched actually feels like. But a hidden rainforest is one thing. What I found next was a place that time physically forgot, and it is slowly being reclaimed by the earth itself. In Perak, just outside the town of Batu Gajah, there is an unfinished mansion called Kelly's Castle. William Kelly Smith, a Scottish rubber baron, began building it in 1915. He died in 1926 before it was completed. And it has sat there ever since, Moorish arches, an elevator shaft with no elevator, a rooftop Hindu temple built to thank Indian workers who survived a flu epidemic. Crumbling. Unoccupied. Entirely itself. The smell of laterite stone in midday Perak heat is something I cannot fully describe, old mineral warmth, like the inside of an oven that hasn't been used in a century. Bougainvillea has pushed through the window frames. The walls are developing their own ecology. A history teacher named Priya from Ipoh brings her students here specifically because it is not on the curriculum. She told me, the textbook tells them about independence. This place tells them what independence was a response to. By 1920, Malaysia had over 40 colonial rubber estates. Fewer than 3 preserved colonial structures are still publicly accessible. The rest were erased or absorbed. Kelly's castle survived because it was never finished. There was nothing to repurpose. The castle is strange and beautiful and melancholy. But the island I'm going to show you next doesn't appear on most tourist maps, and the people who live near it have made a quiet, collective decision to keep it that way. Off the coast of Johor, 45 minutes by boat from Mersing, there is an island called Pulau Besar. It has Malay shrines. It has colonial-era military graves. It has a local reputation for being spiritually active in ways that serious people speak about without embarrassment. It also has warm flat sea at low tide, a single warung still operating on the beach, and an absolute silence after 6 in the evening that is unlike anything I have experienced in this region. James, a British expat who had lived in Johor Bahru for 3 years, told me a local colleague finally took him there on a whim. He said it was the first time in Malaysia he felt completely outside any version of a tourist experience. Not because it was remote. Because it was real in a way that Redang and Perhentian, Malaysia's famous marketed islands, booked months in advance, can no longer be. Those islands are beautiful. They are also optimized for your arrival. Pulau Besar has not been optimized for anything. It just exists. If Pulau Besar is Malaysia's secret island, what I found in the Maliau Basin in Sabah is described by scientists as one of the least explored ecosystems on the planet. It is a sunken plateau, roughly the size of Singapore, surrounded on all sides by natural escarpments so steep that it remained effectively isolated from human contact until the mid-20th century. It was formally documented in 1947. Large sections of it are still biologically uncharted. It contains species that exist nowhere else on Earth. Dr. Nadia, a wildlife biologist from University Malaysia Sabah, has spent 7 years studying the basin. She told me that tourists fly over it every day on the way to Kota Kinabalu and have no idea what is below them. I asked her what it sounds like at dawn. She said, "If you have never heard a Bornean gibbon call across an empty plateau at 5 in the morning, you have not heard what this planet is actually capable of." I have thought about that sentence 100 times since she said it. The jungle kept that secret for millions of years. But the next place on this list, its secret was kept by humans, deliberately, and it is sitting in the middle of one of Malaysia's most visited cities. In Georgetown, Penang, most visitors follow a well-worn loop. The street art, the clan jetties, the food, and all of that is real and worth your time. But there is an alleyway 200 meters from the famous bicycle mural that most tourists never find, where the murals are not charming and decorative but documentary. Panels about displacement, about the history of the Straits Chinese, about what Penang cost the people who built it. Mei Lin is a third-generation Hokkien woman who lives on Chu Jetty, one of the 6 clan jetties built over the Strait of Malacca by Chinese immigrant communities more than a century ago. She told me that tourists walk to the end of the jetty, photograph the view, and go back to their hotels. They never ask who lives in the houses behind them. They never ask why families with 150 years of documented continuous occupancy still hold legal status equivalent to squatters. At 6 a.m. on Chu Jetty, the air is thick with incense from the temple at the entrance. The wooden walkways creak under every step. The water below is the exact blue of the pre-dawn strait. And somewhere in the houses along that boardwalk, a story is being lived that the tourist map has never found room to include. If you believe that stories like this deserve to be told, the ones that don't fit inside a travel brochure, subscribe right now. Not for content. Because every view on this channel is one more person who knows something real. Speaking of things hiding in plain sight, everyone knows the Batu Caves. The 272 rainbow-colored stairs. The 42 meters statue of Lord Murugan. The pigeons, the monkeys, the midday crowds. What almost no one knows is that the main chamber, the one you photograph, is the entrance. Behind it, through a narrow rock passage, are inner chambers that 90% of visitors never enter. And what is inside them is a completely different experience. Rajan has been a guide at Batu Caves for 12 years. He told me, with zero bitterness, they get the photograph. They think they've seen it. They saw the lobby. The inner chambers have formations that took millions of years to develop. The temperature drops the moment you enter the passage. The ceiling in the deepest chamber rises so high that a headlamp beam disappears before it reaches the top. Hang Son Dong in Vietnam gets National Geographic spreads and international documentary series. It has global name recognition as a natural wonder. Batu's inner systems have formations that professional cavers describe as equally dramatic. But because it is a functioning Hindu temple, the adventure tourism industry has never known what to do with it. So they don't mention it. And 90% of visitors go home having seen the lobby. Now, the next place on this list holds something rarer than any cave formation, a living culture that exists nowhere else on Earth, and it is disappearing faster than anyone is reporting. An hour from Kuala Lumpur, on an island called Kari Island connected to Selangor by a small bridge, there is a village called Kampung Sungai Bumbung. The Ma Mary people live there. They are an indigenous Orang Asli community who have developed one of the most sophisticated wood carving traditions on the planet, masks and spirit figures cut from pulai wood, each one a theological argument, each one a conversation with a cosmology that predates Islam, Christianity, and colonial contact in this region by thousands of years. The smell of freshly cut pulai wood is sweet and close, like very young pine. In the workshop of a master carver, the only sound is a mallet on a chisel. There is no traffic. A single mask can take 3 months to complete. Azizi, a graphic designer from KL, visited on a photography assignment. He grew up 70 kilometers from this village. He had never heard of the Ma Mary. He spent 6 hours there and told me he drove home in silence. The Ma Mary number fewer than 3,000 people. Their carving language, their forest knowledge, their oral histories, transmitted person to person, generation to generation. No institution has fully archived them. That made me uncomfortable. What I found out next made me furious. Here's the lie that has been told about Malaysia for 30 years. It is a stopover country. A transit hub. A place you pass through. I want you to think about who benefits from that story being believed. It is not random. Western travel media built its Southeast Asia editorial infrastructure around Bali, Bangkok, and Ha Long Bay, because those destinations already had the marketing budgets and tourism boards to pay for coverage. Malaysia's tourism spend, by comparison, went into infrastructure, airports, highways, fiber internet, not international PR campaigns. So the narrative stayed. And it was not neutral. A narrative that empties a country of international curiosity protects the market share of the destinations that filled the vacuum. Here's what that narrative erases. Malaysia is ranked among the world's top 12 most biodiverse countries by the United Nations. It contains 10% of all known flowering plant species on Earth. The IMF identified Malaysia as one of the 3 fastest growing economies in Southeast Asia in 2024. Kuala Lumpur's KLIA was rated the 4th best airport globally by Skytrax, ahead of several airports that get used in airline advertisements as symbols of world-class travel. Malaysia is not a stopover. Malaysia is the destination that other destinations borrow from, its food culture, its forest pharmaceutical research, its architectural syncretism that exists nowhere else in Asia. It built the infrastructure that makes the region run, and then forgot, or was told, not to mention it. The world didn't overlook Malaysia by accident. It was directed to overlook it. And that ends right here. Now that you know why it was hidden, let me show you 2 more places that prove the hiding was genuinely a crime against anyone who loves travel. In Perak, in a town called Gopeng, there is a cave called Gua Temperang. It is one of the longest cave systems in peninsular Malaysia, 3.8 kilometers of navigable passage through live limestone formations. You can walk it, wade through underground rivers in it, swim through flooded chambers in it. The entry fee is under 30 ringgit. It receives fewer visitors per year than a mid-sized regional museum in Europe. The underground river runs at ankle level through the first passages. The water is cold in a way that air conditioning is not, geologically cold, held at the same temperature for millennia. In the wide chambers, your voice disappears. Stalactites drip onto your shoulder in absolute silence. A geology student named Yuki, studying at a university in KL, visited Temperang expecting something comparable to the show caves she knew from Japan. She said Temperang made those look like hallways. She wrote her thesis there. Freya Nakhon Cave in Thailand receives 300,000 visitors annually. It is smaller than Temperang. It is less complex. It is less accessible. It has better international PR. That is the entire, embarrassing difference. I thought Temperang was the most surprising thing on this list. Then I found the final one. And I still cannot believe it was sitting there all along. Taman Negara is 130 million years old. Not 130 years. 130 million. It is older than the Amazon rainforest. It survived the ice ages, the continental shifts, the mass extinctions. It is the oldest continuously existing rainforest on the surface of this planet. Most visitors who go to Taman Negara do the canopy walk. They see the park headquarters. They take the boat tour. They spend 2 days and go home. That is not Taman Negara. That is the gift shop version. The real Taman Negara begins 3 days' walk from the nearest road, where the Batek people, one of Malaysia's oldest indigenous communities, still move through primary forest the way they have for 10,000 years. Where the humidity at 5 in the morning is a physical weight, not a weather condition. Where a blowpipe demonstration is not a tourist show, it is lunch preparation. Hakim has led interior expeditions in Taman Negara for 15 years. He told me every single foreign guest who completes the full interior route asks him the same question at the end. Every single one. Why didn't anyone tell me this was here? He has never had a good answer. Taman Negara receives roughly 300,000 visitors per year. Fewer than 1% ever leave the park headquarters zone. I came to Malaysia thinking I was killing time before a better destination. I left understanding I had been living inside a geography of assumptions that other people built for me: airlines, marketing agencies, editorial calendars, a travel media ecosystem that decided what Asia's worthy destinations were and printed it into the culture. Malaysia didn't fail to impress me. I failed to show up ready to be impressed. If this video cracked something open, share it with one person who still thinks Malaysia is a layover. Subscribe if you want more of this. And now tell me something. Is Malaysia the most underrated country in all of Asia? Or do Japan and Singapore still deserve the top spot? I want two sides in the comments. Pick one, make your case. I am reading every single reply.